it's interesting. I mean, I've been fortunate enough where I've had a lot of international students, and I've had some students from Russia and Ukraine, and they've echoed some of the same sentiments that you've added. Actually, I had one Ukrainian student that told me that they actually had never met an African American person until they came to the U.S. And then when we go into the Ukraine war, and I learned about the Nazification in Ukraine, I learned about the letter that was signed by people like Rokana, where they said in 2018 that they were deeply concerned about the Nazification, not just in Ukraine, but also in Poland, which all of a sudden they seem to forget about that letter now.
Yeah.
It all started to make more sense. But one of the things that I've wondered, I noticed something that I didn't notice before. Ukraine is right next to Moldova. So then I started to think about something else when I hear people talking about Ukraine corruption, particularly Zelensky as well, using US aid, using some of these dollars for things that are not a part of this conflict. And I honestly have to ask, I know that Moldova also has an issue with corruption. And funnily enough, I learned about that from 90 Day Fiancé, where there was a cast member who was from Moldova, and he was telling his fiancé that when you come to my country, you have to understand there's a lot of corruption that happens in Moldova. And I was once a part of that at some point in time. So there may be things that you hear, et cetera. I wonder if some of the corruption from Moldova in some way made its way to Ukraine. Do you know anything about that, or about the corruption that has been claimed about Zelensky, for example, about him using dollars for other purposes instead of the war?
Yeah, I mean, look, Moldova is a corrupt nation. Romania is a corrupt nation. That region had a lot of corruption, but Ukraine is corrupt on its own right. It's not as though Moldova was a diseased entity that infected Ukraine. It might be the other way around. Moldova might have had a chance, except it was living next door to Ukraine, which from its very inception has been the most corrupt place in the world from the very beginning. You know, a lot of people talk about, you know, there was an agreement. I think it was, it's either the Budapest or the Bucharest agreement. It might be Budapest agreement, but in 1994, where Ukraine agreed to give up its nuclear arms. You know, this is the legend. They gave up their nuclear arms with the guarantee of security. And everybody's like, so Russia now has violated that, and Ukraine would have been better off having nuclear weapons because the West has abandoned it. And I always point out to people that Ukraine never had nuclear weapons. Never. There were Soviet weapons. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, the Russian Federation said, there are weapons, nuclear weapons. And Ukraine never had the ability to fire them. All the codes, the launch codes, the locking mechanisms were all controlled by the Russians. And the Russians made it clear to the Ukrainians, you make a move on the nukes, we kill you all. It isn't going to happen. So the Ukrainians never owned them. What they agreed to is that they would dispose of them, either return them to Russia or have international inspectors come in and remove them. And this was part of Ukraine's acknowledgement that in order to be part of the international community, they had to agree to join the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which means they forswore being a nuclear power. They agreed to this all up front. But then the Ukrainian governments run around, they go, how can we get more money? This is the honest to God's truth, Sabrina. How can we get more money? We're going to blackmail the world. We're going to say we ain't giving up these nukes until you pay us money. And so they sat there and became a giant grift. And they sat there and you know, it took more money from the West, more money from the West, more. And finally, Russia came in and said, we're tired of this game. Here's all the money you asked for. Let's get rid of the nukes. We're done. But it was a grift. Ukraine is a giant grift. There's not been an honest day of governance in Ukraine. The oligarchs in Ukraine are some of the most corrupt and some of the most violent. When I was a UN weapons inspector, I went to Kiev in 1997. We were going there to try and talk the Ukrainian government to stopping the work of this Ukrainian arms dealer who was basically taking apart the weapons factories that Ukraine had and selling the production equipment to Iraq, to Libya, to other nations. And we wanted to get them to intervene to stop. Oh man, it's not government like you think it is. It's government of what can you do for me? And I was an American, but I was a UN employee. The whole time I was there, whether it's from Kuchma, the president, on down to the intelligence service, every meeting was, hey, now we'll do this, but can you put in a good word for us to join NATO? Can you help us get into NATO? And I'm like, I'm a UN official. I can't help you get into NATO. I don't represent the United States of America. Yeah, but you're an American, right? You can do this, right? And I'm like, no, I really can't. But you're saying yes, right? No, I'm really saying no, I can't. I had to get out of there. I had to get out of there because it was so corrupt. I was told by someone that I'm really angering people because I'm not playing the game and that my life could be at risk. That's how corrupt this place is. It's a disgusting cesspool of corruption and criminality that occupies the highest levels of government and has occupied from day one. The oligarchs run the country. You know, Zelensky was an actor. He was in this show called Servant of the People. And it's a fascinating show because he played a common man who became president. He was a teacher and he became president. And then because of this show, the Ukrainian people thought he could be president because he played one on TV. So they elected him to be president. But when Servant of the People starts, it's basically showing this room with, I think, 4 or 5, faceless men who are running the country. And they're talking about the deals they're cutting, what they're going to do. That's how Ukraine's run. If you think it's about the parliament, the will of the people, nope, it's about the oligarchs getting together and divvying up power. And it's always been that way. Zelensky was brought in by an oligarch to do exactly what he's doing right now. He is not the representative of the people. He's not a servant of the people. He is the servant of the oligarchs, which means he's a servant of the powers that are using the oligarchs to pursue policies inside Ukraine. It's always been corrupt. It will never be a democracy as long as this system exists. The one good thing about this war is it will probably break that system. A Russian victory will probably result in the defeat of this corrupt entity that's known as Ukraine, and whatever emerges after that might have a chance of normalcy.